China is in the middle of its electric wagon era, with more and more manufacturers producing EV long roofs. But today, we're going to check out a car that's looking to become the new king of Chinese electric wagons. Bow down, puny peasants, in the presence of the Denza Z9 GT.
Denza, for those of you who don't know, is a premium brand from BYD, China's largest producer of EVs and PHEVs. Be sure to check out our video from earlier this year, where we went in depth on the Z9 GT's exterior styling. Despite its rather polarizing rear-end design, the sleek wagon is undoubtedly the best-looking model from Denza yet.
That's not exactly a high bar, but thankfully, the Z9 GT's exterior styling is only the beginning. It's what's underneath that really matters. This thing uses the new E3 motor system. So unlike E4, that's the one underneath the Yangwang U8 and Yangwang U9 that uses 4 electric motors, this uses 3. 2 in the back, 1 in the front. It's also going to come as a PHEV and a pure EV. In pure EV spec, it's going to make 640 kilowatts, or about 850 horsepower. And the pure electric, it's going to make 710 kilowatts, or around 960 horsepower. Quick tip for those of you looking to tell a PHEV from an EV. First, there's less body color trim underneath on here. Second, and probably more obviously, there is an active grille shutter right here above the license plate on the PHEV. Both powertrains use BYD's LFP Blade batteries. The pure electric car has a 630 kilometer range on China's CLTC cycle from a 100 kilowatt hour battery, and the PHEV, well, the PHEV's battery specs and range haven't been released yet. We know that its total range, when you combine its LFP battery and the gas range from the 1.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder up front, is 1,100 kilometers on that same CLTC cycle. Denza has insisted to me multiple times that their goal on the rear-end styling of this car was to create something that was unique and easily identifiable. Mission accomplished. They have not released an official rear cargo capacity for this car, but I can tell you, it seems pretty big, maybe around the size or a little bit bigger than a Zeekr 001. There is no space really underneath this tray here, but it does have electrically lay-downable second row seats as such. As you can see in this particular version, this center console doesn't lay down. There's a good reason for that I'll show you later. Right now, I'll show you the fact that it has electrically raising second row seats as well. The Z9 GT also has 10 degrees of rear steer, the same as a Mercedes-Benz EQS. But despite the fact that it has nearly as long a wheelbase and slightly longer body than the EQS, it has a turning radius that is less than a Mini Cooper. The compass turn executed by the Z9 GT is slightly different than the tank turn done by something like a Yangwang U8, which turns all 4 of its different tires in different directions because it has 4 motors. Instead, this locks the front wheel and uses the 3 motors to spin the unlocked 3 wheels in different directions and then pivots around that tire. A little bit like you can do with the trail turn assist on a 4x4. This could be a legitimately useful feature in places like tight urban environments or underground parking garages, but if you were thinking 6,000-pound EV plus compass turns on pavement means lots of tire wear, Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. You can see the marks that it's made on the ground throughout the day, but what you cannot sense is the smell of tires being worn away. Apart from when you want to show off to your neighbors, you're probably never going to do a 360-degree compass turn. But imagine how much easier it is to parallel park when you can do this. The Z9 GT can achieve a moose test speed of 93.6 kilometers per hour. The 2020 Porsche Taycan Turbo S, 78 kilometers per hour. The Z9 GT, like so many other cars in this class, has electrically operated doors, which you can close in various ways. I could touch the button here on the door. I could hit the brake pedal, which would close the door. That would squeeze my camera, so I won't do that. Or I can hit the button here on the roof, like so. It's not the easiest thing to operate. I'm not really sure why it doesn't electrically open when I pull on the handle on the outside, but that's a thing for the OTA people to figure out later. Getting into this car has a incredible sense of ceremony to it because there's so many things that move to greet you. The little speakers on the top of the dashboard rise up out of the dash. The air vents on that dashboard open up to reveal themselves, and the little dual 50-watt charging pads right here raise up to greet your waiting phone. It's quite impressive, but I can't help but feel like the Z9 GT is going to get less and less enthusiastic about greeting you as each of those little electric motors dies one by one over the years. The interior of the Z9 GT has a 3-screen configuration. 10.25-inch instrument cluster, 17.3-inch center screen, 10.25-inch passenger screen. Keep in mind those are not the official numbers, as Denza, for some reason I do not understand, hasn't actually told those to us. That's just based on the numbers from the Denza N7 that we previously tested. That's the size of its screens. The UI and UX on those screens is, I wouldn't call it cutting edge. Then again, screen UI and UX has never been BYD's forte, their biggest strength. This honestly feels like kind of a reskin of the UI that we have in our BYD Yuan Plus work vehicle, a much cheaper car, and the response times aren't quite as fast from this BYD self-developed chip as I would expect them to be from something like a Qualcomm Snapdragon 8295. Having said that, if you compare this to a lot of these screens in foreign brands, it's pretty impressive.
If that's not enough screens for you, the Z9 GT also has optional camera-based exterior mirrors, which add a small screen to either end of the dashboard. I didn't get a chance to use these on the road, but I did try them out when maneuvering a car around a parking lot. While they look very cool, I think they would take some serious getting used to.
The good news is that BYD has provided a decent number of physical buttons for the interior, including over here on the door, as well as a row of nice switches here. Well, I say nice because they're switches and they exist, but I'm not a major fan of this crystalline look, let alone the crystalline shift knob up in front of it. Honestly, they just remind me of the little glass figurines that my grandmother used to collect and put in her living room. And don't get me wrong, I love my grandma. I really love my grandma, but she and I do not have the same sense of style. And nobody wants their car's interior compared to that of a old lady's living room. Aesthetics aside, let's talk about what these switches actually control. First of all, you've got the button for switching between pure EV and hybrid mode for the powertrain. You've also got the button for turning up your E3 menu here, which is where you would control your tank turns. If it was a pure electric, seems as though the PHEV does not have tank turn. Oh, so sad. You also have your button for changing your driving modes, which appears on the dashboard. You have your auto parking, and then here you have something that says Yunnian in Chinese. Yunnian is DCIS. That's the English word for the Yunnian suspension system. In this car's case, it is Yunnian or DCIS A. A standing for air suspension. Denza P and Denza X are the ones that are on the Yangwang U8 and U9. Those systems, very distracting, sorry, those systems use a hydraulic suspension, but Denza A, as the A would indicate, uses an air suspension with adjustable height and stiffness thanks to CDC. The center console storage area on this car isn't particularly large, but that's probably because it's a refrigerator/heater. It can keep things between -6 and 6 degrees Celsius, or when it's heating, 35 to 50 degrees Celsius. This thing also has a sound system from BYD. Don't check me on that pronunciation. Definitely don't ask a French person. That's the correct pronunciation. Just take my word for it. This sound system has, I don't know how many speakers, and I don't know how many watts, because again, Denza hasn't told us that. All I can tell you is the speakers have metal grills that look nice, and it sounds pretty good. If you've seen some of our other reviews of Chinese cars, you can probably guess why it is I've now moved over to the passenger seat. That's right, this thing has a zero-gravity passenger seat, and it's also, just like the driver's seat, heated, cooled, and massaging. Not to be outdone, the second row is also heated, cooled, and massaging, at least on this particular spec. They also have adjustable leg rests and adjustable rake. As you can see, down between the seats on the back of the center console is a small screen where you can control your air conditioning as well as your seat functions that I just mentioned. If you fold down this center console here, you'll have an armrest, 2 cup holders, and a second refrigerator / heater. This one is actually significantly larger than the one in the front. That one is 4 liters. This one is 10, just in case you can't fit all of your takeout in the front one. Both rear passengers have their own individual little vanity mirror here. Very useful. Next to that is the button for opening and closing your electronically operated doors, as with the front. And down here on the B pillar is something I've actually never seen before inside of a car. You can let me know in the comments if you've seen it before. This is a air vent. That's not the thing I've never seen before. Don't go to the comments. The thing I haven't seen is this button at the top of the air vent. If you click it, it electrically opens or closes the air vent. Usually that's done manually, so I thought that was pretty nifty. The Z9 GT has a 3.125 meter wheelbase. For those of you living in America, that means really big, a very big wheelbase, like Mercedes-Benz S-Class wheelbase. So as you can see, you've got tons of legroom. Headroom, however, not especially copious, especially copious. I am 5'9" or 1.75 meters tall, and I really barely have maybe 3 fingers of space between my head and the roof. Speaking of the roof, that reminds me of something very important when it comes to this car, and that is material quality. This is a Alcantara or micro suede kind of, probably closer to felt-like material. Still very soft, nice to touch, and that's pretty much true of all the materials inside of this car. I don't know if this has any sort of optional leather package. They haven't told us that. Maybe the lower spec cars won't have quite as nice of material quality, but overall in this particular car, there's very few surfaces that are unpleasant to touch. The unpleasant ones are those awful crystalline switch knobs and stuff. But other than that, this is a genuinely luxurious feeling interior. As I sit here and enjoy the cooled and massaging seats in the back, let's talk a little bit about price, because you'll note that I haven't said anything as of yet. This car, in pure electric trim, will come in 3 different specs: Pro entry level, Max mid-spec, and Ultra high spec. The PHEV will come in 2 specs, Max and Ultra. We know right now that a pre-sale price for the Max mid-spec electric version is $47,000 US, and the Ultra PHEV has a pre-sale price of $59,000 US. Since the E3 tri-motor powertrain is available in all trim levels across all the different powertrains, that means a Pro entry-level pure electric car could be priced a little over $40,000 USD and come with that 1,000 or nearly 1,000 horsepower powertrain. So I've already told you the power levels on this thing. Now let me tell you the performance. The PHEV will hit 100 kilometers per hour, or 62 miles per hour, in 3.6 seconds. The pure EV will do it in 3.4 seconds. This is actually my second time experiencing the Denza A air suspension. The first time was in the Denza N7 SUV, and I've got to tell you, I was not impressed. That was BYD Group's, that is, first air suspension car ever, and I could tell that they didn't have a lot of experience tuning air suspensions. The hardware seemed to be there, but that car's vibration control was really quite bad. When you went over multiple small bumps or, potholes, the vibration that came into the cabin was really not very impressive. And I actually had the opportunity to drive the N7 and this car back to back today, and yeah, my first impressions were definitely correct. The good news is the Z9 GT is a major improvement over the N7 in terms of the suspension tuning, the air suspension tuning. Not only is the vibration control better, it's also much sportier and more fun to drive. As well it should be, considering this is a wagon and that is a family SUV. This thing really what impressed me about it was the fact that it actually is pretty fun to drive for, again, a big wagon that is as long as a Mercedes-Benz EQS, slightly longer in fact. The front end is pretty maneuverable. It feels quite flexible, quite flickable because of that rear steer system that it has. The rear steer system effectively shortens the wheelbase of this car from 3.125 meters to, I don't know, something under 3 meters. So it will surprise you with just how flickable it can be. Where that system really comes in handy, however, is at low speeds, where this thing is incredibly maneuverable, say in parking lot situations. It's so maneuverable, in fact, that you kind of have to take a bit of time to get used to it. When I first got into the car, I kept putting in too much steering angle and almost running into curbs or cars next to me. Once I got used to it, however, it really is quite a nice system to have. One point of complaint for this car. This is supposed to be kind of a lower, sportier electric GT wagon, right? Well, the seating position in this car definitely doesn't feel like a GT or even a wagon. It feels more like an SUV. It's very, very high. I currently have it adjusted to the lowest possible level. Can't go any lower than this, and I still feel as though I'm sitting on top of the car. That is simply a problem of having a giant battery pack underneath. The Z9 GT, in addition to its many front screens here, also has a large heads-up display, though I have to say it lacks the detail and clarity of some other systems, like that of Li Auto. This car we're driving right now literally just came out of the Pingshan factory near Shenzhen and was driven directly to this driving event, so a lot of the features that it has haven't actually been turned on yet, and that includes the LiDAR-based driver assistance system. Now, driver assistance systems have never been a strength for BYD Group, so I was actually very curious to see how this one would perform, but that's unfortunately going to have to wait till a later test drive event. While it might be taking things a step too far to say that the Z9 GT is the king of Chinese electric wagons, what with the existence of the higher performance Zeekr 001 FR, I will say with certainty this is the king of Denzas, because this is the first Denza I've ever tested that I'd actually want to buy.